Hi, and welcome to Noble Character Crafts. My name is Amy, and I'm coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Friday, April 7th, 2023. This is a channel all about my crafty life, and today I have crocheting, knitting, and some sewing to share with you all. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you really enjoy this episode. You can find me online on Instagram at Noble Character Crafts, and you can get in contact with me through my email at noblecharactercrafts@yahoo.com. I'm hosting a year-long make-along on Instagram called Make 9 2023 Mal, and that's for you to join in the Make 9 challenge, where you can choose 9 projects that you would like to make or work on this year, and post a grid of those projects, and then anytime that you work on one of those projects or finish one, you can post a picture of that to Instagram along with the hashtag Make92023Mal, and that will enter you into the drawing to win a prize, which I draw periodically throughout the year. Now, 2 episodes ago, I announced 2 more winners for this make-along, and I had, again, for the second time in a row, not heard from the winner. But in the meanwhile, I did hear back from the winner of 4 episodes ago that did not originally contact me. So, originally 4 weeks ago, I believe, if I have my time right. No, it wouldn't have been 4 weeks ago. It would have been 4 episodes ago. Anyway, I announced that one of the winners for the Make 9 2023 Mal was Leslie of Leslie's Lake Life on Instagram. And she didn't get in contact with me after... I usually wait, I guess, a total of 4 weeks before I draw a new winner. Anyway, I had announced a new winner for the prize, and after that, then Leslie got in contact with me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't see your episode in time," but she was completely understanding that the prize had already been given to somebody else. But anyway, now, this time, I've again not heard back from one of the winners, and since I've heard from Leslie, I've decided just to gift Leslie the prize that was not claimed, which is actually a different prize than the original one that I had said was Leslie's prize. But anyway, this is the prize that had not yet been claimed, but I'm going to be gifting this to Leslie since she did get in contact with me eventually. Hope that makes sense. Anyway, the prize is 3 different skeins of cotton yarn that would be perfect for making dishcloths, and one of them is from Knit Picks Dishy in the Sunset Multicolorway. One is from Sugar and Cream, Lily Sugar and Cream, and it's in the Scrub Off type of yarn. And this one's called Bowlful of Jelly. And this one is by Universal Yarn, Clean Cotton, and it is in the Hibiscus colorway. These 2 are 100% cotton. This one is 85% cotton and 15% polyester. So anyway, those are going off to Leslie. And then also, when Leslie got in contact with me, she also is a knitwear designer, and she offered to gift a couple of her patterns as prizes as well. So I thought that was super generous of her. Thank you again, Leslie. So I'm going to I've drawn 2 more winners for today's episode, and each of those prize winners will also receive a pattern of your choice from Leslie's Ravelry shop. She did say that if the winner does not use Ravelry, that she can certainly email the prize to them, but you can choose from her patterns that she has on her Ravelry shop. You can choose whichever pattern you would like. So I'll insert a little clip of a few of her patterns. I think she has maybe 20 or so patterns available on her Ravelry shop. So they are all beautiful, and I am so grateful for your generosity to gift a couple of those patterns to some of the participants in the Make 9 2023 Mal. Leslie, thank you again. So also, along with your pattern prize, the first winner is also going to receive this beautiful hank of yarn by Legacy Fiber Arts. It is on the steel toes base, which is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. There's not a colorway name on this label. So I don't know if maybe it was a special of some sort. I'm not sure, but it's very, very beautiful. Look at all those beautiful specks. So pretty. And then you will also be receiving from Hey Country Creations this cute little handmade beaded progress keeper that has this little dino coming out of an egg. And it comes this cute little heart pouch with some sweet treats and her business card. So the winner of this prize, along with a pattern of your choosing, is on Instagram at Wooten6273. Congratulations to you. I'm so excited that you won a prize. Please get in contact with me and let me know your full name and mailing address, and I will be glad to get this off in the mail to you as soon as possible. You can either contact me through Instagram or through my email, but I often chat with this lady on Instagram, so I assume she'll contact me through Instagram, which is perfectly fine. In fact, I probably check my Instagram messages a little more often than I check my email, but either way works. If you're not, if direct message on Instagram isn't as convenient, that's perfectly fine just to send me an email as well. The second winner will be receiving this gorgeous hank of yarn from Expression Fiber Arts. And this is in the Lovebirds colorway. It is on the Resilient Superwash Merino sock, which is not listed on here what the makeup of it is. That's odd. It doesn't say, but I'm assuming it has some nylon in it since it is called a sock yarn, but that's not necessarily true. But you could look on their website and I bet that they would have some more details about the content of this yarn. But anyway, beautiful, beautiful colors of green and blue. And then you'll also be receiving this package of, there's 4 buttons in here that say handmade with love. So sweet. So the winner of this prize is at One Mama's Crafty Corner on Instagram. So congratulations to you. Again, just get in contact with me through email or Instagram direct message and let me know your full name and mailing address as well. Thanks to everybody who's been participating in the Make 9 2023 MAL already. Please don't hesitate to join in at any time. It's a participatory make-along. You don't have to finish anything. Whips are allowed and encouraged, and any craft is also allowed and encouraged. So don't hesitate to join in. If you need some more details about the make-along, there are more details about it in the description box below. I have a few finished objects to share with you all today, which I'm so excited about. The first of which is the Chloe Sideways Shawl. And last time I was working on this, I showed you I had gotten to about the halfway mark. And it's a very long shawl. It might be a little too long, honestly. I could rip back and shorten it if I decide to. I think I'm going to keep it for myself because I just really love the color, but I'm not 100% sure. I guess it kind of depends on if I wear it. If I choose to wear it or if it goes for a while and I'm not wearing it, then I might gift it. But I think I'm going to keep it for myself because I really think it's so beautiful and I love this color. This is the color of my prom dress. And so it's kind of fun that, I don't know, kind of reminds me of my prom dress, I guess. Anyway, this is a free pattern by Clare M of Truly Crochet, and I crocheted this using some yarn that was gifted to me by Danielle of Midwest Stitches. Thank you again, Danielle, for gifting me all of this beautiful yarn. This is a discontinued yarn by Lion Brand called ZZ Twist. It's 100% acrylic, although I've said before that it doesn't feel or act like acrylic from my experience. It just feels so drapey and light and sleek and smooth, and I don't know, it just has, I don't know if you can tell on camera how it's different than most acrylic, but it just has such a nice feel. And if it wasn't on the label that this is 100% acrylic, I would never guess that it is. I think it feels more like a cotton to me, but like a really nice cotton, not a stiff cotton. I don't know. Anyway, it's very cool to the touch, and I don't know. I really love it. Anyway, I crocheted this using an eye hook, which is a 5.5 millimeter hook. I started it on March 4th and I finished it on March 29th. I did a total of 46 repeats of the 3-row stitch pattern, which you can probably see starts here and goes to here. So this is one repeat from here to here. And I did 46 of those. It measures 18 inches wide and 82 inches long. So it's very long, but it's, you know, the fact that it's just a long rectangle, in some ways I love a long rectangle because it really can be worn in a ton of different ways. But then on the other hand, sometimes I find that it's a little bit more difficult to style than like a crescent shape shawl, which is usually my favorite shape of a shawl. But anyway, it works so nicely when I just drape it over my shoulders like this, and if I stand up, it hangs down to my knees this way. I really like it though. I think it's neat. I think it's really beautiful. But anyway, I was playing around with it, and you can wear it in so many different ways, really. So it's nice just to drape it over one shoulder like this, and it's really quite long enough that I think it would stay pretty well if I had it situated just right. Or you can wrap both sides around and get kind of a, that's pretty too. Since it's such a long piece, you can also just wear it like a scarf. So you can just scrunch it up and wear it like this. You can wrap it around at least 2 times and get a really cozy type of look. You can tie it up here, and if it was cold, you could really cozy up. It's got a lot of, you know, it's lacy, so it wouldn't be a good windbreaker, but like this, it kind of would, really. The color is just so, I love it. I don't usually gravitate towards brighter colors, but I think this color is okay for me. I don't feel uncomfortable in it anyway. I love it. I think it makes me happy, this color. So anyway, I think it's beautiful. I just love the stitch pattern. It was so enjoyable to make. It took me a while to memorize the pattern, especially the edge stitches, because for the 3 different rows, some of the edge stitches are different, and I had to keep referring to the pattern to remember what I did on the edges at certain times. But anyway, it worked out, and eventually I had it memorized. So I think it's beautiful. I'll keep it on, I think, because I love it so much. All right, my next finished object is this masterpiece. I am so thrilled with how this baby blanket turned out. I think maybe it might be one of my favorite baby blankets that I've ever made, and I love making baby blankets. I've made quite a few, but I just love how this one turned out so much. This is called the Rainbow Diamonds blanket, and it is a pattern by Jane Bolin. I got the pattern from a vintage leisure arts pamphlet, which is right here. But it is also available as an individual pattern, which I will link to as well. It's originally designed to be made using sport weight yarn, and it's originally designed to be joined as you go with the no-sew join as you go method. But I adjusted those 2 things. I used worsted weight scraps in all of these beautiful green and gray shades. And I love it. I think it's so beautiful. I just really love how it turned out. I varied my hook size quite a bit depending on the yarn, because since I was using a bunch of scraps, they're all worsted weight according to the label, but as always, which is kind of annoying, the weights do vary depending on the brand of the yarn. So I varied my hook size from a 3.75 millimeter hook. No, I went down to a 3.5 millimeter hook for some of them, and then went up to a 5 millimeter hook, depending on the yarn weight, because I wanted to try to get these squares to be about the same size, no matter what kind of weight I was working with, you know, what the thickness of the yarn. I wanted to try to get them to be all about the same size. Once they were seamed together, that some of them still were a bit smaller than others, but once they were seamed together, it seemed to work out just fine. So I did seam these squares together instead of joining as I went along, just because I was doing a lot of yarn management. I was using scraps, and so I wasn't sure how many squares I was going to be able to get out of each color. And so I didn't feel comfortable joining as I went, because I was afraid I might start joining in a color and then not be able to make enough squares to finish off that round, because as you can see, each color makes a round around the center. And anyway, I just decided to sew or join them together. I did that by using a whip stitch and joining them through the back loops. And I followed the pattern as far as the number of squares and the actual technique of making the squares. I followed the pattern. I just joined them in a different way and used thicker yarn. Last time I recorded, I had the center all done. So from this lime green color all the way around to make that big diamond shape, if that makes sense. So I'd gone around the whole thing. Oh no, I think I had gone around the whole thing with this gray yarn actually. And then I had finished off one corner. So I needed to finish off the other 3 corners and then add the border. Now with the border, I did make a modification with that as well. I had first tried to follow the pattern that she gives, which has a scalloped edge. Along here, you can see what that's supposed to look like. But I think because I did not join as I went along, maybe my gauge was different than hers. Therefore, when I tried to use the border that she has in the instructions, it was not laying flat. I think maybe because my squares probably are tighter, you know, joined, there's no gapping in between each square, which you would have a bit of more gapping in between the squares if you joined as you went along. But since mine are seamed together, they're really snugly seamed together, if that makes sense. So there wasn't as much room, and so the border was ruffling a bit. It wasn't laying flat. So I just decided to do my own thing. And also, since this is going to be for a boy, probably, I thought maybe a ruffly border wouldn't look as boyish. So I thought it might be better just to do a granny stitch along the edge anyway. And I just love the granny stitch, so I was happy to do that. So I decided I had a bit more of this light gray color, which I actually only used on these 4 squares. So I had a bit more of that I thought I could make around the blanket with, and I was able to. And if you look closely, you might be able to see that every other granny stitch is a little odd looking. Can you see that? I used a new technique that I just learned from a video that Sarah of It Is a Sarah podcast had posted. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find the video where she talked about this. She's working on a granny square blanket as well right now, and she used this technique and showed how to do it in one of her videos. But she posts so often, which I'm so grateful for. I love watching her videos. She posts 2 videos a week in English. And anyway, so I'll try to find the video where she showed the demonstration of how she did this stitch, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it because it will take a lot of searching to try to find it through all of the videos that she makes. But if you don't watch her videos, I highly recommend them. She is just such a joy to watch. Anyway, the idea is that when you are joining 2 squares, when you're going across the join of 2 squares where these 2 squares meet, it can get a little tricky to know how to do a granny stitch along the border. And what she does is she does one double crochet stitch, US terms, into the corner stitch of this square. And then she does a decrease stitch using a double crochet stitch. So she does, well, if you know how to do a decrease stitch, you yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops. Then you yarn over and go into the next loop. So then you would go into this corner stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, and then you yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, I think, are left on your hook. So basically you're making these 2 stitches into 1, if that makes sense. And then you just do 1 more double crochet on this side, and that kind of joins those 2 squares more evenly, so you get an even edge along your granny square border. If Eva, my friend, is watching, I wanted to explain this technique to her as well, because she's also making a granny square blanket, and she was asking about a border for it. And I hope that makes sense, Eva, how I explained it, but I'll have to show you in person sometime whenever we see each other next, if it doesn't make sense. But anyway, then after I did that row, then I used a dark green color to do a single crochet stitch and then chain 3 single crochet along the border, because I think that looks so sweet. I've used that type of a border several times on granny square blankets. And then I just finished off with this lighter green color using a normal granny square stitch. Anyway, I really love how it turned out. I think it's lovely. I'll stand up so that you can see it in its entirety. You can also kind of get an idea of how long this shawl is on me when I stand up, but so pretty. Okay, here's the blanket. I think it looks so cool. It looks a lot like a quilt, I think. And I think it is so special. I really love it. That is so neat. I just think it's really eye-catching, and I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. The finished blanket measures 39 inches square, which is actually smaller than the original design. It's supposed to measure 40 inches square, which I just think is so crazy because I used worsted weight instead of sport weight. So you would think it would have been a lot larger. But again, maybe it was because I seamed the squares together. And so again, they're just cinched in a bit tighter, is my guess. But I'm not sure why it turned out smaller, but I think it's a great size for a baby blanket. In fact, really quite large for a baby blanket. But I think it will be such a nice gift to give to somebody. I don't know who. It's just going into my gift collection to give to somebody at some point down the road. I have also finished this fun pair of Scrappy socks that I was working on last time. I think last time I had just finished this yellow golden stripe. So I was so happy to get these finished. I had made a pair of socks similar to these at the beginning of the year, and I just loved the process of making them so much that I wanted to make another pair using all different scraps. I cast on 60 stitches using a US 2mm needles, and I did 2x1 ribbing for 20 rounds. And then whenever I switched colors, I did a slip 1 knit 2 pattern for 2 rounds, so I could get this cool slip stitch detail. Then for each color, I did a total of 10 stripes before I changed colors. I, as you can see, did 70 rounds on the leg. I did a slip stitch heel flap and gusset, and then I did 5 rounds. Well, after the gusset decreases, I did 3 rounds before I added in the slip stitch detail to the ball of the foot, which I do on all of my socks to add some more reinforcement to that part of my sock, because I tend to wear holes in my socks most easily at the ball of my foot. So I just do a very similar pattern to what I would do on a slip stitch heel flap on the ball of the foot for 30 rounds before I do the toe decreases. So I just did a rounded toe and Kitchener the toes together. And I think they turned out super great. I'm so happy with them. I think they're so fun, and it was really fun to make them and see all the different colors stripe up together. So I just love how those turned out. They're so fun to make. And then for the ends, I just sewed in all of the ends. I don't mind doing that. It is quite a long process when you have so many scraps. I should have timed myself to see how long it took me to weave in all of those ends on the socks, but you know, it takes at least probably a half an hour, I would guess, for each sock to weave in all those ends. But it's just another process of the making, and I really don't mind sewing in ends. It's not my favorite part of the process, but it's kind of relaxing to sew in ends as well. My last finished object has a bit of a story. So this is one of my 10-year-old son's shirts that he has grown out of, but he loves it and I love it too. I think the fabric is so fun. It's just got all these fun jungle animals on it, and he loves animals, especially reptiles and anything creepy crawly he really likes. Anyway, my mom suggested that I could add some fabric to the bottom hem so that it wouldn't be too short on him, because that's really the problem, is that it's gotten too short on him. And I could, but I had already proposed to him that we use this fabric to make something out of, you know, use the fabric to make something new for him. And he really liked that idea. I suggested, you know, we could make it into a pillow or a bag or a stuffy, and he loves stuffies so much. So I figured that if I mentioned that, he would be like, definitely he wanted a stuffy. So we went online and looked for stuffy sewing patterns, and he found a pattern for a blue whale that he really liked. And it is by Willowynn. Willowynn is the sewing designer, and it's the blue whale sewing pattern. And I wanted to make up this sewing pattern using some other fabric before I cut into this shirt, just to make sure I could do it well enough. So my son picked out some scraps from my stash of fabric, and here is the blue whale that I made for him. And he's so happy with it. It really turned out quite cute. I'm happy with it as well. It's definitely not perfect. Pretty sure I've never sewn a stuffy before. So I was really happy with how it turned out. It took me 3 hours to make from start to finish, which compared to, you know, if I were to knit him a blue whale or crochet him a blue whale, it would take much longer than 3 hours. So that's quite gratifying. But anyway, the pattern was really, really well done. It was very clear to understand how to do everything, so that was great. I didn't have any problems with the actual pattern and understanding what I was supposed to do. It was labeled to be good for a beginner to try to do. So I was happy with that. It only has 4 pieces for the main body, and then there's 4 fins as well. So there's 2 pieces for each of those as well. Those were kind of, they're pretty small, and so they were a little bit, it was a little bit fiddly to sew around them and then to turn them right side out, but it wasn't terrible. I just used a pair of tweezers, which she recommends in the pattern, to turn them right side out. And then the sewing, it went really well. She suggests that you use a really small stitch and to double stitch all of the seams. So you go over all of the seams twice to give it a lot of strength so that it won't fall apart, hopefully. And it came together really well, I think. He's so cute. I then embroidered the eyes on using a French knot and some, I don't know what the other stitch I used is called, just a line to do like a little type of eyebrow almost, I guess, or eyelid, I guess it would be more like. Anyway, I'm not much of an embroiderer either, but I did my best. And then the only trouble I had was with the finishing. She recommends that you stuff it a lot. She said that it's supposed to be really firmly stuffed. So she said stuff it until you think it's done and then stuff it a little bit more. So I did. I stuffed it quite well. I did have a hard time getting any stuffing to really, a little bit went into this dorsal fin, but it was difficult to get much in there. You can kind of see that the tip doesn't have any stuffing in it, but that's all right too. Anyway, you have, one little opening where you put all the stuffing through, and you're supposed to use a ladder stitch, which I had to look up on YouTube to see how to do a ladder stitch to close up that seam, but it's supposed to be an invisible seam, and mine looks pretty poor. The trouble I had, well, I don't know if this was my only trouble, but one of the troubling parts that I had with doing that stitching was that I had trimmed my fabric really close to the seam as she directs, but I think I should have not trimmed my fabric quite so closely along here, because when I went to sew up the sides, the fabric was kind of pulling apart from itself, I guess, on the edges here. So I think if I hadn't trimmed down the fabric as close along this area, that maybe that would have been able to seam up more nicely. But anyway, and then I had to kind of go over everything with just a whip stitch because I was afraid it wasn't very strong. I didn't want it to come open, and it looks really wonky. So I'm really unhappy with how that turned out, but oh well. I wonder if maybe it would be better to have the opening be like maybe on the bottom on this seam instead of on the side. I don't know. You are also supposed to do some embroidery stitches of some straight lines here on the underside. I forget what those ridges are called. My son, who this is for, would know, but I forget what those lines are called on the underside of a blue whale. But anyway, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think it's super cool looking. I think the fabric that he picked out for this sample turned out so well, and he's very excited for me to make the next one using his shirt. And then he's picked out just a plain navy blue fabric that we'll use for the underside. It won't use up, it doesn't use up much fabric at all, so we'll still have lots of leftovers of this fabric. So I don't know what else we might make with it, but anyway. I will probably try to work on that second blue whale this upcoming weekend. Today is Good Friday, by the way, so anyway, we have Easter celebrations this weekend, so I'm not sure if I'll have a ton of extra time this weekend to work on that, but I might tomorrow. We'll see. All right, so those are all of my finished objects. Now on to works in progress. First of all, thank you to so many of you who commented with your suggestions on what I should do for the crocheted cardigan that I'm working on called the Whisper Cardigan by Heidi May of the Velvet Acorn. On my last episode, you would have seen that I am having some fitting issues with that cardigan, and so many of you suggested that I contact the designer, which, of course, I should have thought of that to start off with, and I have done that, but I just did that this morning. I just sent her an email this morning, so maybe I haven't checked my email again to see if she's replied already or not, but anyway, I had just kind of put that project on hold for the last couple weeks, and then decided to go ahead and send her an email and ask if she had any advice. The problem that I'm having is that when I've tried on, I've only done a few rows, really. I've only made about this much progress. It starts from the neck down, or from the top down, but it's just not laying nicely across my shoulders. When I try it on, it's really ruffling around my shoulders. So I just asked her if that was normal, or if I should keep crocheting. Will it kind of lay more nicely once I crochet some more, or what? I let her know that I am getting gauge, and I let her know what size I'm making and so forth. So we'll see if she has any tips for me, and I'll let you all know in the next episode probably. But the first project that I have put a little bit of progress into, not a ton, but a little bit of progress, is being held in this bag that I made myself. And it is my Felix cardigan, which is a pattern by Amy Christoffers of Savory Knitting. And I have, like I said, not worked on this a ton, but here is a progress keeper that my cousin Allie made for me. So sweet, and that's marking where I was the last time I recorded. So I made a couple of inches of progress on the body, and then I've put the body on hold for now and I've started working on the first sleeve. Now I am making the smallest size, and which, if you've watched before, this is the second time I had to rip back because I was making the second size and it was turning out too large for my preferences. So I ripped it back to the raglan increases and am only making the smallest size now, which I'm really happy with the fit of it. When I got to the sleeve, I followed the directions for the smallest size, and I knit about 4 inches on this first sleeve, but it didn't give me much positive ease in the sleeves at all. It was very close fitting throughout the sleeve, and I wasn't happy with that, so I decided to rip that back also. And I just picked up stitches again this morning, and I just picked up extra underarm stitches so that I will be at the stitch count for the second size. So that was an easy modification. There's plenty of room in the underarm to pick up more stitches, so I just went up to the next size for the sleeve count. And I won't be doing any decreases throughout the sleeve, which is typical for me. I'm just going to knit these sleeves straight and then just do a rapid decrease before I get to the cuff. The yarn that I'm using was gifted to me from a viewer of this podcast named Joan, and it is a Ulltex brand Kerry Tweed, color number 7. And the makeup of it is 15% kid mohair, 15% mohair, 40% acrylic, 30% wool. It's a worsted weight, I believe, and I really love it. I think it's working up beautifully. So I'm excited to get some more progress done on this, hopefully, but we're getting warmer weather lately, so I probably won't be using this much until the fall anyway, so there's not a huge hurry, but yeah, I'm assuming I will get focus on this a little bit more in the next few weeks, but we'll see how distracted I get. Oh, I am using the needles for this project. I am using US 9 needles, which are 5.5 millimeter. That's what I was able to get gauge with. My next work in progress is being held in this sweet bag that I received from, again, Danielle from Midwest Stitches. So beautiful. And in here is a pair of socks that I am knitting for a friend of a friend. Her name is Faith, and she is a friend of my friend Tina's. I do know her, but I don't know her well. But anyway, she has commented on Tina's socks that I have knit for her, and Tina let me know that she had commented on her socks and how she liked them, and so I offered to make her a pair. So Tina picked out this yarn from my stash. It is Regia 4-ply in the Gerbera colorway, and it is 75% virgin wool and 25% polyamide. It's also color number 4463. Sometimes they don't list the Gerbera or Gerbera. I don't know why I have a hard time with that name. But anyway, they don't always list that name on, places where they sell Regia yarn. Anyway, last time I recorded, I was up here where that Progress Keeper, which is from Emily of Salt City Knits, in a yarn kit that I got from her, or a sock kit that I got from her when she was dyeing and selling her yarn through Yarn Brewery. Anyway, it came with a sock set that I got from her. I cast on 60 stitches, again, using US 2 millimeter needles. These are Chowgu red lace, which is typically what I use for my knitting projects. I did 2x1 ribbing for 25 rounds, and then have just gone into straight stockinette, and I did 55 rounds for the leg, so a total of 80 rounds for the entirety of the leg here. Then I've just done, this is rare for me that I don't use a contrast color for the heels, but I just thought that this yarn would work to just continue with the same yarn for the entirety of the sock, so that's what I've decided to do. So I did another slip stitch heel flap on these socks, and I have just finished the gusset decreases. So I will continue on with the foot now. It'll be nice and easy. Faith's feet are the same size as mine, so that's super easy. I will just do my regular pattern, which is 80 rounds for the feet before I do the toe decreases. So those are a nice, simple pair of socks to work on. Super enjoyable to have something simple and mindless to work on when, you need something that you aren't able to concentrate on what you're making, but you want something to work on. Those are perfect. All right, I have another pair of socks that I have started in this sweet bag. I received this in a swap several years ago, but I absolutely love it. I think it is so gorgeous with that pieced quilt work on it. So pretty. And these are my Felici socks for the month of April. So I have the goal of working through my Knit Picks Felici yarn stash throughout the year. And I have planned it all out so that I have a different colorway to work through each month. And so these are my socks for April. The colorway I'm using this month is called Base Jump. It's got these fun blues, oranges, and a white stripe as well. And Knit Picks Felici is fingering weight, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. And I am also working through my collection that I haven't knit yet of Crazy Sock Lady Designs sock patterns. So I have several of Kay's sock patterns that I haven't yet knit up, and so I have the goal of working through those patterns as I am making up these Felici socks this year as well. So this pattern is called Cable Ridge socks by Kay Litton of Crazy Sock Lady Designs. And I think they're so pretty. I love them. The cuff, I picked the middle size, the medium size, which is 64 stitches. And again, I'm using US 02mm needles, and the cuff is a 1x1 twisted rib. And I did that for 18 rounds, which is just a little bit shy of what she recommends, but it seems like that always happens to work out with the Knit Picks Felici, that 18 rounds works out for the color striping. So I do 3 color stripes. And then I want to start working the pattern when the color stripe changes. And that works out to be about 18 rounds every time. Anyway, then the pattern for the sock has some cables in it, some purl ridges. This is the front of the socks. And then there's even some cabling done on the back of the socks down the middle. Now, I usually, when I've made, a lot of times when I work with self-striping yarn, when I come to purl bumps, I just knit those stitches instead of purling them when I have a color change, so that I don't have a purl blip, if you know what I mean. But I'm not going to be able to do that on these socks, I don't think. I'm not going to. I'm just going to follow the pattern, and I'm not going to care about color stripes because there's so many purl ridges that I think it would really mess up the pattern if I did knit stitches instead of purl stitches. So I do have one little blippy section right here on the back of this one sock where the color changed. I try to match my socks, but the color is off sometimes by a few inches, and this one happened to change on that purl row. But I'm not going to worry about it because, like I said, I think it would really mess up the pattern if I knit those stitches instead of purling them. I think it would look odd. So I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm sure I will have several of those sections throughout the sock where I get a bit of a color change in a purl section, but I'm not going to worry about it. Anyway, I love these, how they're turning out. I think they're great. It is a very windy day today out there, so you can probably hear the wind. I hope it's not too disturbing. The next project, since I forgot to mention that this blanket is another one of my Make 9 projects. So this was on my Make 9 board. So it's the 4th project that I have finished from my Make 9 board, which is so great. so happy with myself for staying focused on my Make 9 board this year. Because last year, if you have watched for a while, you would know that last year I only made 2 projects for my Make 9 boards. I had made 2 boards and I only made 2 projects total from either of those boards. Anyway, this year I only made 1 board and I've already made 4 of the projects, which is great, and I have started a 5th one. Actually, I have the crochet cardigan that I mentioned is also on my board, so this is actually the 6th project that I've started. This is going to be another baby blanket, and I think it's great. This is called the Cozy Stripe. Yes, Cozy Stripe Blanket by Attic24. It's another free pattern on her blog, and I think it is so fun. I just really am loving it. It's a very, very simple pattern. It just uses, her terms are in UK terms, but I'm going to speak in US terms. It just uses double crochet stitches for 2 rows, and then it uses the granny stitch for 2 rows. And you switch colors every other row. So you get, you know, when you're doing a double crochet section, you use one color, and then when you go onto the granny stitch section, you use one color. And I'm again doing a bit of yarn management because I'm using a bunch of scraps again. And I'm trying to measure how much yarn do I need to do those 2 rounds. And it seems to be coming up between 15 to 16 grams to do 2 rows, depending on the stitches. It seems like the granny stitch takes less yarn than the double crochet stitches, but it could just be the yarn. I'm going to continue to measure it because, again, I'm using lots of different scraps, and so it may vary depending on which yarn I'm using. So you can basically see the color palette that I'm using. I haven't used all of the yarns that I have to use up. There'll be more variation, but they're all going to be in these colors. So creams, browns, tans, blues, basically. And I think that will be so fun and cute. I started with a chain of 120 stitches. I'm using an H 5mm hook. I started it on March 27th, and I haven't worked on it a ton in the most recent days, but I am excited to work on it some more. It's really an enjoyable pattern. So I have it held in this huge bag that I thrifted, and it is, I've got way too much yarn for what I need for a baby blanket, but I've got so much yarn in here that I'm going to be working through. And I even have 3 more skeins of a neutral colored yarn that I could use, but I pulled them out because I don't think I'll need them. I'm sure I have more than enough yarn in that bag to make a nice sized baby blanket. So this will be the width, and I'll make it a rectangular shape. So that's great. I just really have enjoyed working on that a little bit so far. The last project I want to share with you is my excavation blanket, which you would have seen in the beginning. I had my daughter take a little clip of me working on this project because I thought it might be interesting to see how I purl and to see me working on this. So this is a very slow growing project, but I want to show it off whenever I make a couple of inches of progress, which doesn't seem like a lot. It's not a lot, but I don't get a chance to work on this project very often, so making a couple inches of progress is kind of significant, I guess. Anyway, this is a free pattern, again, by Jana Pihota. And last time I showed this off, I was down here where this beautiful progress keeper that Erica of Rose Opal Knits cross-stitched and gifted to me, and I love it. So I have made a few inches of progress there, the majority of which is from the Scrappy socks. So whenever I finish a fingering weight project, if I have enough leftovers from that project, I add a color stripe of the yarn that I have used to this blanket. And I started here with this cream color, and I was able to add in all of the color stripes except for the color that I had for the toes on those socks because I didn't have enough left over to add in a color stripe. It only takes about I think 1.5 grams around there to make a color stripe now, because I've decreased a lot, but I didn't have quite enough of that one. So I love this project so much. It is such an enjoyable project. So I have made a modification to this project as well. The original pattern calls for you to, it's just done in garter stitch, which you can probably tell. And then at the beginning of each row, you leave a tail of yarn. You knit across, increasing on each row for the first half of the blanket, and then come back again with another increase stitch, and then you leave another tail at the end of each row. So you don't have any ends to weave in, because you just leave this fringe on the edge of your blanket when you're done. On the second half, when you start doing decreases, she recommends that you continue to do a knit stitch, but then you would end up with half of your blanket showing the right side and half of your blanket showing the wrong side, which looks like this, which is not ugly at all, and I like it as well. But I wanted my blanket to be consistent with having all one side show the right side and all the other side show the wrong side, if that makes sense. So instead of doing knit stitches on the second half of this blanket, I'm doing purl stitches. And that's working out well for me. I do not mind purling at all. I quite enjoy it, and it's working out well for me. So I really don't have a ton of work left on this compared to the entirety of the blanket. I started this blanket back in 2017, so it's a hugely long process of making this project. You can see I have progress keepers marking each year. So from here to here are all of the stripes that I added last year, and I just have marked every year. There's a different progress keeper marking each year. So it is so much fun to work on, but I usually don't have, you know, if I have a scrappy project that I finish, then I can add in a lot of stripes. But typically, like for the Regia pair of socks that I'm working on, I will only have one stripe for that pair of socks, whereas I had, I don't even know how many would that have been? I think 17 stripes for the scrappy pair. So anyway, that is so much fun. I'll go ahead and stand up really quickly so that you can see this one in its entirety as well. So here this is. It's so difficult to show off at this stage because it's so huge, but you get a general idea, I hope, of what it's looking like. And I just have, you can get a better idea of how much is left. I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell, but just a little bit is left in comparison to the entirety of the blanket. So this is just a really fun project to continue to work on slowly but surely. I would love to be able to finish that this year, but I bet I don't have, I bet there's too much space to finish up this year, but maybe next year it'll be finished. We'll see. Those are all of the projects that I have to share with you this time. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope you all have a great couple of weeks until I see you again. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye, everybody.